So as we go through, you are welcome to engage with us in the chat, share comments, ask questions of our speakers, whatever y'all would like. Now, as we are interacting with our fellow attendees and everything, like always, just make sure that we're leading from a place of kindness and respect. Now, if you have other questions or anything that you want to raise but you want to be kept anonymous, not a problem. Just DM your question to me. You can find Meg Alexander on the drop down instead of sending to everyone. Like I said, please feel free to keep that chat active. Let us know how you're feeling about questions we're asking. Is your lived experience different? Do you want us to dive in deeper on a certain question? So absolutely, please feel free to let us know in the chat there. Now, I did say we are live streaming as well as recording today's session. So what that means for all of you is you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, relax, enjoy the conversations that Rachel and I are about to have, and not worry if you missed a resource or a link that someone shared. You can always go back and rewatch these recordings. So how that's going to work is everybody that registered, so whether you showed up here, even if you didn't, even if you stay for 5 minutes, doesn't matter. Everybody that registered is going to get an email from Power to Fly in about 1 to 2 days, and it'll have a link to where you can rewatch this recording when it's posted on our website. Now, let's say that, as always, Rachel says something that is so just mind-blowing, you cannot wait to share it with a friend or a coworker or a relative. You do not have to wait 1 to 2 days. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. We're live streaming there right now, and the videos are usually posted within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of the live stream. And you can share all kinds of links from there. There's a huge segment of our chat archive, so a whole bunch of past events are stored on that YouTube channel. I'll share links for all of this in the chat in just a little bit. But you can also check out, like I said, on our website, there is a huge, like everything that has happened from the beginning of Chat and Learns to now. All of those recordings are on our website, free to browse, free to share with people, whatever you'd like. So obviously the YouTube channel is great, but if you want to check out the full archives, you got to head over to our website. Now, last but not least, one thing that we want to let y'all know, or kind of shout out here, is that Power to Fly has missions, right? A lot of our missions are about better treatment in the workforce. We want to see true gender equity in the workforce. We want to see pay equity across, basically everyone. We want to see these workplaces that truly represent not just the people that are considered professional as of right now, but everybody. We want to see workplaces that reflect the world we live in. Now, if that is something that you all are also passionate about, and I think you probably are because you're here with us today, and if you want to help with that mission, we would love, love, love to recruit y'all. So if you want, please feel free to take photos or video as we go, share out to your social network, and let people know that you are learning with Power to Fly. We think that by getting as many of our free resources into as many hands as possible, that is how we are going to move the needle and do our part to try and get to that future that we all want to see. So if y'all want to help with that, we would love to have y'all spread the word. We would love to retweet, reshare, repost, whatever y'all send out as well. So please feel free to tag us. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we are also use the hashtag Power to Fly. So thank you so much for anybody who will help us out with that mission. We love to see it. So yeah, thank you so much. Now I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today. So many of y'all might be familiar. Rachel is a returning star here. But one thing that y'all should know is that Rachel Serwetz, her early professional experience was at Goldman Sachs in operations. She also worked at Bridgewater Associates in HR. Now, from there, Rachel was trained as a coach through NYU and became a certified coach through the International Coach Federation. Now, Rachel has worked in HR research at Aon Hewitt and also attained her technology MBA from NYU Stern. Now, throughout that career, Rachel has helped hundreds of professionals with career exploration. And for the past 5 years, she's been building her company, Woken, which is an online career exploration platform to help coach professionals through the process of clarifying your ideal job and your ideal career path. So Rachel, welcome to the stage again. You are an old hand at this with us. But is there anything else that you want our audience to know before we dive into questions today?
No, I think this is a good intro. And of course, if anyone has questions just on my background, happy to chat more about it. But hopefully this is enough intro that you get a sense of who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now, like Rachel said, we are going to dive into questions. We looked at the questions that you all submitted during the registration period. We tried to get as many great ones as possible, and we're going to try and get to as many as we can today. What that means though, is if we are going over your question and you want to give us some extra detail or some context, maybe we're not really approaching the question in the way that you had intended it. Let us know, send that information in the chat. If you asked a question when you registered and you're not sure if we're going to get to it today, ask it in the chat. Ask early, ask often, y'all. We want to make sure that y'all understand. We know you have a ton of options when it comes to upskilling, when it comes to networking, when it comes to events like this. We are so grateful that you spend time with Power to Fly and amazing people like Rachel, that we really want to make sure we reward you for taking that time out of your day and being here with us live. So if you got questions, send them in. I want to make sure that we give y'all the value you came for from today's event. All right, Rachel, to get us started here, I want to talk about when we're setting goals about being realistic and achievable. So I don't know about you, I tend to set aspirational maybe goals as opposed to realistic ones. So what should people know when they are trying to set goals in this realistic and achievable way?
So I actually have a slide here somewhere that I'm going to find for you, because when I think about realistic and achievable, there's different ways of thinking about it. Like, you want to think about how can you measure and know that the goal is done or was completed? That's when it's, to me, realistic just means specific enough that you know what it is you're working towards. I find sometimes people set goals that are like, I want to network more, but it's like, either what's the reason, what's the purpose behind that, or how will you know you've achieved it? Is it meeting one new person in your target role or target industry per week, and you want to do that over the course of the year? So like numbers, specifics, measurable, something that you know, like how, like literally, can you say yes or no, this thing was done? So I like to think about more of specifics. You know, when you say realistic too, I don't want someone to feel like they have to, make anything like smaller necessarily. You can have ambitious goals as long as you break down what are the subcomponents of how you're going to work towards it. Realistic and achievable were the two words, right? So to me, achievable just means breaking it down into pieces. You don't need to make it smaller. You don't need to, you know what I'm saying, right? We want that ambition to be there. I'm going to show you super quickly, because I actually have a slide, and I know I referenced the goal setting template. Let me actually share my full screen. Can you still see this screen?
Yep.
So this is like a really rough, I just took a screenshot, but this is the template. You guys can actually go to this link, and I'll actually put this in the chat. Let's see if this will work here. There we go. So make a duplicate. That's a copy, but just make a duplicate of that spreadsheet. But if you look on the left side, you can put your goals there. And then column number 1 is like literally, what is the future state? How and when is this thing achieved? How can you describe, like in a year from now or whatever, like that goal is done? How specific can you make it? The full list of ideas, what that means is brainstorm all the variety of methods as to how you could actually go achieve that, because there's probably so many different ways of making that goal happen. And you actually want to think big before you narrow it down about like, what could I even do to sort of work on things, right? Then we're going to talk a lot today about accountability, but how and when are you going to work that into your week, right? And by the way, there's 5 rows here. You don't need 5 goals at any given time. You could just have 1. But if it's a goal that you really want to work on, you've got to make time to do it. And it's up to you how much time. It could be a little bit every week or a little bit every month, but you've got to get creative with how and when you're going to focus on it. And the beauty of adding time is that you may have a time slot to say, work on this goal. And maybe that time slot is spent strategizing or planning or thinking or brainstorming or researching or getting mentorship. You don't have to feel like that time block is just meant to like hit the ground running. Like it's literally just time devoted to, what do I need? What's going to move me forward in this goal? And what does that mean? And then you see each column for the quarterly goals. You can divide it up quarterly. You don't have to. It depends if it's like a year-long goal. This template, by the way, was meant for 2023 annual goal setting, but you may have a goal that you want to achieve in 3 months or whatever it may be. That's fine. And then of course there's the status. So what's cool about that is you can always just think about where am I at today? And you can almost compare the status column with that first column of where am I trying to be in the future state versus where am I at right now? The other cool part about quarterly is you can build over time. So maybe there's like a baby step and then a second step and it grows. The other cool part about something like this is you can space it out. Maybe your first two goals are Q1, Q2, and maybe the other goals are Q3, Q4. So this planner is kind of just like a nice way of easing into the whole thing. And the last thing I'll say about this is if you're trying to grow within your workplace, it's one thing to set like personal goals, like career-wise, whatever. But if you're like at work and trying to grow, this is an amazing thing to also share with your manager and agree to the goals together. And then, especially if you're trying to get promoted, it's like, what do you need to see from me in the course of a year? Let them say that. And then together you figure out how to show your progress over time. So things that are visual are going to help you and help other people to also see your progress.
Oh, I love that. And I very much like you said, the idea of, coming up with your goals and then sharing that with your supervisor or with your, with your manager. I think that is an excellent way to like, not only show like, yeah, I want, I have ambitions. I want to do this. I want to do that. But it's also, like you said, it's a really great way to have accountability and to make it super clear that like you want to do X, Y, and Z. People don't know that what you want to do unless you tell them. They can't help you get someplace if they don't know that you're on a journey at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. All right. So we did get a lot of questions around imposter syndrome in relation to goal setting. So let's talk about how these two things work in tandem. Is imposter syndrome always something that's going to kind of cut your legs out from under you while you're goal setting? Or do you think imposter syndrome can be useful? How should people approach this if they know they're dealing with imposter syndrome and think that they're likely to encounter this?
Yeah. Imposter syndrome is really common, and I could try to find for you. I have like a meditation, I believe, on imposter syndrome, but it is an opportunity. First of all, any feeling is an opportunity. If you're willing to understand how you're feeling, you should always see that as an opportunity and turn it into one. You might recognize the moment, you might recognize the feeling, and then you could ask yourself, how can I literally leverage that? Meaning, if you're not sure if you're great at something or good at something or capable of something, what is the practical step you can take to figure that out? Is it getting perspective from a colleague? Is it getting feedback from a manager? Is it, getting support from a mentor, a coach, a peer? Is it, I love written exercises. Like I have an exercise where it's like, what am I great at? What am I good at? What could I be great at? What am I not great at? And like, that's okay, because I think what we forget is like, we're human and we're a mixed bag, and there's going to be things we don't want to do, things we love doing, things we're great at, things we're not great at. But as long as you separate those, you want to try to see yourself as objectively as possible. That's where imposter syndrome comes into play. It's like, am I seeing my skills less than the way other people see me? And that means underconfident. But you want to try to objectively understand, like, and this is where the literal understanding and research comes into play of like what skills are literally required to either achieve this goal, project, or make this career pivot or whatever it may be. So learning and objectively understanding what is required of you, and then trying to objectively view yourself and leveraging other people's perspectives to do that is a way where you can try to find that happy medium of like, what is required? What am I, where do I stand? What am I like? And where maybe there's just simply skill gaps that you can work on. Maybe you need to take some sort of course or certification or training or shadowing or working on some skill. And maybe that becomes part of your goals. So that's where it's an opportunity, because we can grow. We can always grow. We can always figure out what goals to work on. And so goals should always be in service of some future state, whether it's like, are we trying to get promoted? Are we trying to clarify our direction? Are we trying to, whatever the ultimate goal is, right? You're setting these sub goals, but what are they all for? Yeah. And so with imposter, like we're all on this growth learning curve. We're all getting better. And it's just like, which skill gap should I focus on? That would be the most useful use of my time, like based on where I'm trying to go in my career. So everyone could work on any number of goals or skills, right? And so recognize there's always growth and opportunity. It's more about being intentional and strategic with which skill area should I even focus on developing that would be the best use for me. That's how I would see it as an opportunity. And, think about those quarterly goals. Maybe Q1 is like, work on my skills and knowledge. And then Q2, you could actually start implementing the project, whatever it may be. So like just laying the groundwork, laying your skills, laying your knowledge as a foundation in order to set you up to work on a certain goal. Like it's just part of the process. And if you realize that you're truly running into a wall and you can't develop a certain skill, then maybe that's not the right path. Like so you do want to find skills that are like the healthy challenge and the right challenge and suitable given what your affinities are. And so sometimes that's a process of like, what skills are even like worth my time? And that deserves time to think through. Like there's so many courses and certifications. So don't feel overwhelmed by that, but figure out like, it's worthwhile to take the time to compare and contrast even the different skills you could work on and which one is your next priority to focus on and why.
Okay, I like that. All right, now we are getting a follow-up question here, talking about kind of imposter syndrome in the context of this. So when we're talking about, most people I feel like know generally what imposter syndrome is. If you don't, I threw a quick definition in the chat window there. But how do we see imposter syndrome complicating matters when it comes to these like setting goals? I'm thinking in terms of, one of the first things we talked about was talking about if your goals are realistic and achievable. But when I heard this question, I thought like, okay, well, let's work backwards. Like if you have imposter syndrome, like you might think there's stuff that you need to work on that you don't need to work on, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yes, good point. So it may influence which goals you need to set or which goals you should set. And so when you're choosing the right goals, I would think about always leveraging someone else's perspective. Now, who you get help from is another choice to be wise about. But if you're trying to get promoted internally, then it's like working with your manager would be the best way to do it, because you kind of want them to tell you what it is they need to see from you. Because in theory, if you achieve all the goals that they set, then in theory, you should be getting promoted. But if it's just like you outside of your job and just setting goals for your career, maybe a career coach, maybe a mentor, maybe a peer. But I think the problem with imposter is when we're fully in our own head and we don't have another pair of eyes and ears and we don't have a sounding board, that's where you can spiral, because it's like, how do we get to some conclusion? And if you're only deciding it yourself, if you notice that you might be holding yourself back, or if you're not sure if they're the right goals, or if you're not sure if you're having imposter, really getting perspective from another source or person, even if you're doing the hard work yourself. So for example, with a coach, I'd want someone to like do that reflection of like, what am I great at? What am I good at? What am I not good at? Maybe comparing that to a job posting or whatever it may be. Like, I'm not going to like tell you those answers, but the ability to listen and help you work through those things and guardrail you from letting imposter take the wheel, that's where other perspectives really help. I also have another super quick slide, and this is a little less impostery, but let me just quickly show you guys, because these are some of the ways that I think about what goals you might want to set. So what are your biggest challenges?
Hold on. All we can see is a black desktop.
Oh, goodness. Hold on. Give me a second here. There we go.
No worries.
Is that, we're good?
Yes.
Okay. So what are your biggest challenges? Like you could just ask yourself that, but you really want to think about the root of the problem. So for example, like, say you're trying to work on, some skill development might be holding you back from promotion. What's the root? Oh, I need to develop this skill in order to be able to reach the next level at work. What's the root of things? For example, sometimes I often find that clarity on your ideal career direction often relates to many challenges, right? So do you need clarity on your goals? Or is it, like I said, upskilling? Is it personal branding, job searching, networking, interviewing, promotion? Like these are some of those high level areas you might think about when setting goals, but just don't be afraid to take time to even think through the questions yourself or talk with someone else to make sure that your instinct might be to set a certain goal. And then you might just need to work through like, well, why am I saying that? And what steps would get me there? And is that truly the root of, what I really need, right?
Yeah. Can you throw that slide up one
Oh,
more time?
yes.
Thank you. Y'all,
Yes.
if y'all want to grab this, you can take a screenshot. It'd probably be the easiest way to get that for yourselves. But I know Rachel's also been sharing links in the chat thread, I think, that go to those slides, right?
I
no, it goes to the goal
can.
setting template.
Yeah. Oh, the template is there. Yes.
Yeah. All right. And I'll keep sharing those links too, y'all, in case y'all lose them. No, I think that's excellent. And I think, it also helps inform what we were talking about earlier, because like, I feel like a lot of the stuff we're talking about goal setting in terms of like getting a promotion or advancement or something, that's not the only time you can goal set. I mean, like you could be goal setting because you need a better work-life balance. And so you need to be looking at where your boundaries are, where whatever. And so it might not be like that you're upskilling or that you're trying to go for the brass ring or your next step up. You can still set these goals, even if what you're trying to do is get your boundaries stronger. Like that's okay.
Oh yeah,
So,
any goals are good. Like if it's on your mind and it's something is important to you and you're already clear on like, I need this thing, whether it's balance or whatever, like any goal is usually good if you're clear on it's something you want or need, something will help you. Yeah, this can be applied personally. It could be within your job. It could be outside of your job. Like, of course, I do career coaching with folks where we could be focusing on your current role, but oftentimes we're focusing on just your career, which may have nothing to do with your current role. It may just have to do with you, your career path, your growth. And, sometimes networking and personal branding and upskilling, like it could relate to your current role, but it also could just be like for your broader career development, what is important for you to be thinking about working on. So yeah, absolutely. Like ask yourself what is most worth your time. And yeah, I mean, in the course of a year, I like to have at least one goal going on at any given time. Sometimes I usually can handle maybe 2 or 3 at a time, right? You don't need to overwhelm yourself. But yeah, I like to think in those shorter time spans, as well as a shorter subset of goals at any one time. And guess what? The minute you achieve those 1 or 2 or 3 things, set the next goals, right? But don't overload your focus.
Okay. So let's talk about the other end of the task here. If we're not overloading our focus, but we're also trying to not procrastinate. I'm sure I'm not the only person here, but I fall prey to this a lot.
Yeah.
So if we are trying to stay motivated, or try and head off the problems of procrastination, what should people think about when they are, when we're setting these goals or when we're deciding how we're going to achieve them?
So accountability is huge. I think of it like a pyramid. So the mindset is the foundation, accountability is that middle tier, and the practical strategy is the top. So sometimes when you're procrastinating, you want to ask yourself, is my mindset, what's going on in my mindset? Because we could talk about how to schedule time into your week, but if your mind is nervous about something, hesitating about something, fearful of something, anxiety about something, which is totally normal, totally common, and it happens with many career and professional goals. That's what you want to understand. And there's always ways of working through that. But you want to get to a point where you feel open-minded enough to then go say, I'm going to schedule the time. But if you're procrastinating, try to really understand what the limiting belief is and try to get support to work through that, whether it's therapist, coach, mentor, peer, whoever it may be, journaling, meditation, to just tap into your mindset first and foremost. You might need some time just to work on getting ready and getting open to even dive into some of these goals. Then once your mindset is ready, then it becomes a question of just tactical accountability. When you're thinking about how to work time into your week, I like to think about like self-awareness plus experimentation is what leads to accountability. You need to be self-aware. If you're not a morning person or if you're tired in the evenings, don't like force trying to do job search at a time of day that's just not going to work for you. You want to be energized, because if you're tired during job search and you're doing it in the evenings, probably not going to be like doing it in the best way, right? You want to have energy to be intentional and proactive. Now, I realize life is busy, life is hectic. There's not always like a good time, but even if you found 30 minutes a week and on the weekend you had more energy than a late night after work, I'd rather you do that, even if it's like a small amount of time per week. So self-awareness and then experimentation. So with accountability, you can explore co-working buddies. I love FocusMate, or just like find a co-working peer that you can meet up with virtually throughout the week. you want to get creative in terms of like the resources, whether it's a community, co-working, a calendar, to-do list, reminders, what tools are going to help you. If you keep tweaking your own system, what day of the week, what time of day, what's going to keep me on track, eventually you will find a rhythm. What I like to do is it could be once a day or once a week. Just ask yourself, did my accountability system work? If not, don't like question like, oh, maybe this calendar thing's going to work. If it didn't work in the first week, it's probably not the right tool for you. So try something different. Some people like a handwritten to-do list or planner. Keep tweaking it and experimenting. And then eventually you find a rhythm. If it's helping you stay productive, then it's working. If it's not helping you stay productive, keep finding other tools that might serve you. And if you keep trying things, you'll get in that rhythm. So self-awareness and experimentation is what leads to that accountability.
I like that you highlight experimentation, because you're right. Like if something's working for you, great. If it's not, start to change it. I feel like this is where people, at least for me, this is where I tend to set myself up for failure, or where I tend to stumble, because I'm like, okay, I've got this whole plan. It's great. It's going to be epic. Something isn't working. And instead of saying, okay, I need to change my reminder method or whatever, instead I'm just like, nope, throw the whole thing out. We got to start over from scratch. So I very much appreciate you kind of highlighting like, it's okay. See if it works, see if it doesn't. If it worked last week and it doesn't this week, change it up. If it works next week, go back to it, whatever.
Oh yeah. Once you find what's working, just keep doing it. But yes, that's exactly right. I think people try something and they get really down if it doesn't work. But like, you have to see even creating your own accountability system as a project unto itself, and getting to know yourself and what helps keep you on track and what helps keep you organized. And that like, see it more as malleable of like experiment with that versus like being mad at yourself or angry that you didn't put in the time. Be more curious about what is going to make it easy and manageable for you. And by the way, I like to think about resources, people, and tools. Resources is like guidance. Like sometimes people don't even start the work because they're like, I don't know what to be doing. So getting the guidance and the support, people, right? Like I said, whether it's a mentor, peer, coach, or co-working or whatever it may be. And then there's the tools, which is handwritten planner, calendar, whatever it may be. Resources, people, and tools. Those are good ways of thinking about different areas of support and improving your accountability. But yeah, try to be more experimental and open to find what works instead of like, oh, this thing didn't work and now that's it. Keep experimenting. And then once you find the rhythm, then all of a sudden, all you need to worry about is the strategic. How do I work on this goal? Like, how do I get into the work? Because you've already got a system and you know when you're going to be productive. So like you do want to, it's okay to take time to figure out your accountability system.
Yeah. Well, and especially if this is the first time you're doing one of these, like there's plenty of us who have never had to do something like this before. So it's going to be unfamiliar. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be, whatever. And I think, you're helping set us up for success here, which we really appreciate. Let's explore that option that you talked about. What happens if you decide that you need to reevaluate or change a goal instead of continuing with it as planned? What should people know about doing that?
Yeah, I really like this question because I find this happens to me a lot, especially like I've been building a startup for over 5 years, and I've recently sort of learned that, I was reading this book, it's called Conscious Leadership, and there was a chapter all about how the founder was like resonating where sometimes quarterly goal setting feels too constrictive because and I realize I have quarterly here. These quarters are for if you're setting a year-long goal, but sometimes a project isn't a quarter-long thing, and sometimes things change, and you don't want to feel like it's like a failure. I think if you're in the process of pursuing a goal and you realize that the scope of that project, like I'll give you an example. Like we were starting to design our next version of our platform, our software, and I was learning as I was going who we needed for that, what the project should even look like. And that was in the course of many months. So I was like, in hindsight, I'm like, it's not that we weren't achieving it. It's that we needed more time to figure out what the goal even is. Who's the right person? What's the scope? What's the budget? Like there's questions that you're going to learn over the course of that pursuit. And if it changes the mark of where you're headed, that's okay because it's still progress and it's still clarity. I would be as open as possible to hearing how things naturally evolve and the learnings you get by in the act of pursuing the goal. If you feel like it's more scope creep and just like things like that, then again, always a fresh pair of eyes. If you have a coach, a mentor, a peer, someone like that, getting a perspective of like, you just want to bring it back to like the root of like, why are we even doing this at all? If you kind of keep coming back to that and the nature of the goal changed, then that's okay. As long as you're being like, what is the ultimate purpose and benefit that we're even looking for here? And if the, what the goal is evolves to better serve our ultimate purpose, then that's fine, right? So being open, but you also don't want to feel like it's changing constantly. If you're naturally getting more information and getting more detail and then getting more clear in what it is you're doing, great. But if it's like changing constantly, then you might just want to literally have a strategy session. You might need to just say, I just need to brainstorm and like explore all my options in an hour with a peer and like go to the drawing board and then revisit it, right? So just be wary of sometimes if we can't make decisions or if we're nervous or if we're scared, we might change it constantly. So just be wary of like why it's changing, right? Okay. And how often and things like that. But this is where other perspectives really can provide support. Does that help?
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. And I think, it also very much goes back to what we've been saying. Like, if this is working, great. If not, it's okay. And it's totally fine to want to change the plan. So it might be that you've developed skills in one area and you no longer need to do that. You might have had personal stuff that happens. And now the timeline that you set up for these goals is not really going to work for you anymore. That's okay. These things happen. We are imperfect people operating in an imperfect world, in an imperfect universe. So I think that is very important to remember, like, have grace for yourself, and accountability is great, but like, that does not mean there's not room for change or room for adjustment. All right. What do you recommend people do when they are feeling overwhelmed by all of this? I know that we've done a great job of starting to break stuff down and kind of bite into more bite-sized pieces. But what do you recommend for people? How should they prioritize when it feels like everything is important and they're very overwhelmed by that?
Yeah, I think prioritization, number one. Like, I just showed you that spreadsheet, but like the spreadsheet doesn't do a great job of prioritizing. I mean, you could put it in order, but like, what is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And just figuring out what balance of time you even have. So there's no need to set 5 goals if it's physically impossible to like work on all 5 in a given week or month. So that's kind of where I was saying it could almost be like a Gantt chart where it's like maybe the first 2 goals or the first half of your year. And then when those are done, the second 2 goals come into play. You could even put, when you say status, it could be backlog. Like maybe things are not yet started and that's okay. So asking yourself what amount of time you have in a given week to even work on some of these things, and then prioritizing and knowing it's, it's sometimes it's just not worth it to even be doing 5 things in a fifth of the time versus pick 1 or 2 goals and put your full force into that, complete them, and then move on to the next few things. Overwhelm could look a lot of ways. It could be like my whole week, I don't have time, or it could just be like, I don't even know how and where to start and where to dive in. If that's the case, I would just always break it down into like 5-minute chunks, right? So say you have a really big goal, like what could you literally do in the first 5 minutes of trying to think? And remember, thinking about it, planning, strategizing, creating a project plan, even doing a little research and learning about the thing. That's okay in the beginning of your goal. I think people sometimes see it as like, I set the goal and then I just have to start the goal. But like, there's this middle ground of like, be in a planning moment, like go pen to paper with a blank piece of paper and just brain dump your thoughts. Like maybe there's concerns, questions, challenges, hesitations, things you want to learn from someone else. Maybe you just want to see how other people approach that goal before you dive into it. There's any number of like middle ground, happy medium, early ways of easing in. Like, I think sometimes we just forget to see those intermediate steps that can ease you into it. And so think about it in terms of like, what can I do in 5 minutes? I think it has to do with prioritization, balancing your time, and breaking it down into like few minute chunks. I mean, those are a few of my thoughts, but overwhelm could mean a lot of things. It could mean I'm nervous that I'm even like, what if I fail? What if I succeed? I mean, there's so many like potential thoughts and hesitations, but again, this is where I say, get that support. Even if you don't want to go purchase coaching, like literally have a peer that you meet up with. Like I have peers, I have a peer entrepreneur that I meet with and we sort of coach each other. We're not paying each other because we're literally just helping each other. I have someone that we do reading with and I just sort of like say, oh, we both need help. Both want to read together. Let's do it. So finding people who you can just think out loud, talk out loud, just have another pair of eyes and ears to get you out of your own way. Sometimes you'd be surprised. So finding the support that helps based on whatever your source of overwhelm is. I also actually have a meditation on my website. So let me just send this to you guys. I've got a lot of things here. I have this one meditation and it's meant for easing into the work. I find a lot of my clients are like, it's just nerve-wracking when you're like, I know I need to network, but then it's like jumping from A to Z. Yeah. So like I have this meditation where it's like, how can you just like literally ease your mindset before you dive into the like nitty-gritty of whatever it is you're needing to work on? And how do you just get a little comfortable, get your mindset ready to like do the work? So, meditation sometimes is a good way of just finding calm so that you can figure out what the next step is.
Heck yes. I love this. We've got people in the chat here who are starting to share resources. Please feel free if y'all have them. Please feel free if there's stuff that you've used that you really enjoy. Thank you so much for sharing the resources people have already started. And Jackie also was chiming in with you. Planning the actions of a goal is part of obtaining the goal. So I feel like you're right. There's a lot of times people kind of feel like, well, the planning part is what I've been doing when you've kind of been thinking about it. And it's like, no, having it kicking around in the back of your head isn't really planning because it's not going to cover all the stuff you need to think about or that you would help you later if you thought about them now. So yeah, I like that. Okay, so let's talk roadblocks. I am a person who can troubleshoot a thing to death, and sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not. So if we're talking about identifying potential roadblocks, what should we know? Should you do this in advance? Should you not? Once you've identified them, how do you proceed? Let's talk what roadblocks might look like here.
You might have an early step of like, what could I run into? But I honestly don't know how worth it is to do that in advance. I think as long as you know you're setting the right goal and you make it specific and realistic for yourself, that you just sort of figure out what's my plan and you dive in and then know that roadblocks are going to come and you just handle them when they arise. It is possible that a little bit of time up front might help you prevent certain things, or it might help you get creative as to what your approach may be. If you like know that you're going to run into certain risks or whatnot, could be valuable. But I just would be wary of like, if you're too much in the hole, what am I going to run into that?
How do I prevent failure? How do I?
Yeah. Like there's some healthy amount of like, what can I prevent? But I just wouldn't want someone to be in this long mindset of like long moment of, all the things that could go wrong and then just derail themselves from even wanting to do it at all. So that's kind of why I'm like, look, let's just build resilience if and when we know things are going to arise. And I mean, it's a broad question and it's hard to say exactly and depending on whatever roadblock you're facing. But I think the key is trying to check in and reflect often, because sometimes roadblocks can be like subconscious. So when we go back to that whole procrastination thing, you need to first understand what your roadblock even is. And reflecting often on how you're doing, journaling, meditation will just uncover what might be in the subconscious. So like that's an important thing. And yeah, when you sort of uncover whatever the roadblock is, I think understanding it, identifying it, and just planning for it, whatever. It totally depends on what you're facing, obviously. But yeah, I think it comes down to kind of what we've been saying with finding the right level of support, finding outside stakeholders, getting out of your own way, brainstorming, being curious, being creative, being experimental.
learning about yourself. I mean, a bunch of when I'm thinking in terms of roadblocks, I'm thinking of things that kind of are stuff that you would consider when you're kind of setting your pace, right? When you are thinking in terms of like, okay, what might make me procrastinate? What might, that to me is troubleshooting roadblocks. And so like, I really like this because like I said, I'm a person that falls into this pit very easily, but it's easy to see why, because, it can be very scary. It can be like, oh my gosh, if this thing happens, I'm screwed. But yeah, like, thinking of it less in terms of, saving yourself a headache maybe, and more in terms of what do I already know about myself? What can I see? Like if I'm looking at my path and down the road, I can see, oh my gosh, there's a giant chasm between like this step and that one, because I need to learn a whole bunch of stuff. That's okay. That's fine. We're planning for these things.
Right. You may uncover along the way new steps that are needed or like gaps in the plan. That to me is not a roadblock. It's more like we uncover sometimes how to achieve these goals when we start pursuing it. And you're right. Like maybe there's a gap from step A to Z or whatever it is. And you add certain steps that you need. Like, I need to learn more about this. I need to research this. I need to understand this. Whereas like roadblock is like maybe something doesn't go as planned, or maybe something doesn't go your way, or maybe there's some sort of hiccup or mistake or whatever. And that's where we just, right. That's where we find resilience, creativity, identify what's happening, identify the possibilities and the way forward and the options, maybe compare some options, maybe get another opinion, maybe you have to get some buy-in, and then you sort of reroute forward, right? So
I like it. Okay. We have about 15 minutes left in today's session. If y'all have questions that you want to make sure we get to, please feel free to share them in the chat. All right, so let's talk about keeping ourselves on track. How often do you recommend people like check in with their plans? Should you be consulting your roadmap daily, or, do you think it's something that's like a little less, kind of daily review?
So it totally depends. Like, I have some clients who are job searching and they're not working right now. That you want to reflect once a day. You want to put in your time on job search throughout the day. And at the end of the day, you want to reflect and say, quantitatively, what did I get done? Qualitatively, how do I feel? And what can I do better or differently tomorrow? Like that, if you have time during the day and you're putting in time to job search or whatever, maybe you want to reflect. You could apply this to in general. You want to reflect and pivot and measure and see how you're doing and check in the right ratio, depending on how much time you're putting in. So say you're putting in an hour a week to whatever the goal is, maybe every 2 to 4 weeks, you might check in and see how things are going. Because that's not a ton of time, an hour a week, right? So you want to give it enough time to like make progress, and to be able to like synthesize how things are going and then see how to adjust. Right. So if you're putting in 4, 6, 8 hours a day, once a day, good time to check in. But if you're like, if it's a smaller goal, less frequent, maybe once a month, something like that. So come up with a ratio that feels good and know that you can always adjust it. And also you might give yourself a cadence for like how often to check in, but it may happen naturally because like, say you're in the midst of just pursuing the goal, you may realize, you know what, this thing's not working. So you may just notice it. Hopefully you're always asking yourself, is this working? Am I making progress? Like in theory, that's always somewhat in the back of your head, but taking a zoomed out view of like, how do I synthesize and really see if we need to like pivot in a bigger way? You would want to just come up with that cadence based on how much time you're putting in and make it a ratio of like, I make enough progress to be able to reflect properly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent advice. Okay. So one of the things we talked about earlier was like the importance of picking who is helping you, right? Who you're leaning on for support, who you're asking for advice. When it comes to trying to find support, how can we identify people who might be able to help us achieve our goals? When it comes to where should we start looking for people that might be, able to help us?
It really depends on what the goal is, obviously, but like I always reference, there's like coach, there's mentor, there's peers, there's therapists, there's managers, there's colleagues, or sometimes there's experts. So for example, when you're doing career path exploration, you would want to learn from kind of like a mentor capacity, but it's like an informational networking call where you can learn from people who are in the roles or in the industries that you're considering. So you can learn from them directly. So in that case, it's sort of like an expert, like in any goal, if you're trying to learn about how someone else is doing something to inform yourself, you want to learn from someone who's done that before. But it depends what you're seeking, right? Coaching has some benefit of like, holistically, what are your actions? How do we move you forward? Just giving you a sounding board and a space and accountability. Different coaches can be different. Some are a little more holistic, some are a little more consultative. Do you want a peer? Do you want a cohort? Do you just simply want accountability? Do you want therapy, which is also can be like the deeper support emotionally if you need to feel more ready and work on your mindset. So many different types of support out there. I think a lot of people, sometimes friends and family is an interesting one. And I actually have a blog on how to leverage friends and family in your career efforts, because sometimes we lean on them more than we should. And you want to think about who should you pick and leverage for support, and what role should other folks play in it. Sometimes our family, we often just like lean on our family as like career guides when that may or may not be the most helpful. So really just being wise about who can plug in. And you can even add to that spreadsheet that I gave you guys, the template, and you can actually add a column. Who are my support systems in this goal, right? And it might vary per goal. Or community too. Don't forget about community. There's like group coaching, group communities. Obviously, Power to Fly is one, but like, you might think about other spaces like that where you have a bigger group of peers, that can relate to you.
Yeah, I like that. Honestly, as I was thinking about the template that you had shared, you talked about, adding another column. And I think as I was listening to you, I was like, oh yeah, it might be, I'm going to go use this, I'm going to add a column for like you said, you broke it down into the three things, right? It's resources, people, and what is it? Resources, people, and things?
Tools.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah. So like that might be something that I'll add to it, because like some of my goals will be personal and some of them will be professional, but that way I can see like, okay, so like for these personal goals, like probably my bestie is probably the person, like, the person I'm going to call.
Exactly.
For like some of the more professional ones, like, yeah, there's a smattering of like people I work with, people I have worked with previously, that I would reference or ask for input. And so, yeah, I kind of like that idea of then kind of getting to organize my goals a little bit more, because then at least personally, I have a very small like board of directors. So I would want to see like, okay, I have like, 5 goals on my chart, and 4 of them, I'm going to be relying really heavily on my best friend to like kind of give me some input. Let's think about, maybe she doesn't have that much time for me, or maybe I want to kind of like stack or rearrange some of my goals so that, I'm consulting her on this thing. I'll give her a break for several months and then, get to go back later. So I like this idea of kind of working in your planning. I mean, honestly, it's almost like having a production schedule, right? Like kind of trying to keep a project moving or something going across your desk. So yeah, I like this.
Yeah, that's the thing with goals. Like, it has to be the way you would show up to any other project. Mm-hmm. Not that it needs to be stressful, but I think sometimes we like set these goals. It's like New Year's resolutions, and it's fluffy and it's not written down and there's no plan to working on it. The likelihood of that
I get ambitious.
Getting done, right?
I get like I get very ambitious and very optimistic without realizing it, where I'm like, oh, I can add it to the pile. Yeah, we're working on 17 personal characteristics this year. So yeah, come on, we'll just round it up to 20. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't want it to be too much. And so, right, when you take pen to paper, it's like set fewer goals that are most important and actually work towards them, right? And even, with friends, like you said, like friends can be helpful, but sometimes even that is like dicey. And that's where coaching can be really beneficial, or even mentors, or, sometimes a peer where if you guys are sharing in the same goal. Like I said, I have an entrepreneur that we meet with. I have someone where we meet about literally reading, and that's a reading buddy that I have. So find someone with like a similar shared goal where you can be that peer-to-peer accountability. Like friends can be helpful, but you just want to figure out, when you think about the who, it's like, how are they going to really be involved? And then is that really going to help me? Because sometimes people are a source of ideas, or maybe you might give them updates, but you really need to ask yourself the hard questions of like, is this literally going to help me stay on track. And sometimes a coach is like, you pay for it, but it's like, that's how you literally know, like, you're truly investing in that goal, versus when you almost tell yourself, oh, I'm going to like do it in this way. And it's like, is that actually going to, do you know deep down that that's going to be the thing to help you? Or are you just saying it because, you know what I mean? Like, set fewer goals and make it really more realistic of like how it's actually going to get done. You don't have to do everything. I'd rather you pick one goal and like be serious about it and figure out like what's truly going to help you move forward on it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. As I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I mean, I can think of like maybe like 2 or 3 pretty achievable goals that I could set, even if all it is just to get myself a win. Y'all, like it can, especially if you're looking at down, if you're staring down the barrel at like some really big changes and things that are going to require a lot of work from you and a lot of, growth and all of that. It's okay to give yourself a win. It's okay. Like start off the day with like a couple super easy things that you can knock out and be like, great. Now I feel recharged. I can climb the next hill because I had my my downhill sprint to get ready for it or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, we've got 5 minutes left, and a couple questions. So let's talk about accountability systems. We talked about them a little bit earlier. What does an accountability system entail? What are there like, kind of baseline, like, oh, it has to have this, this, and this?
I define it as, I mean, we could use that resources, people, and tools kind of framework, but I really just define it as anything that's tactical. So again, you're not just in your head hoping you're going to remember the next thing. It's like, has to be something specific that you can like see, feel, and touch, that will keep you organized, on track, and productive, and on the pace that you set. So it doesn't mean accountability system that you have to be doing this every day. If you want to make progress on something once a week or even once a month, it just has to keep you on track with your pace. That system could be any number of options, right? There's to-do lists, there's planners. I love time boxing in my Google Calendar. Some people will write notes in their notepad. Some people will email themselves a to-do list, or co-working, or just, it could even be, I go to the coffee shop every Saturday at 11 a.m. and I work on my job search for 45 minutes. If the system is something you physically can like do, and it's helping you put in the time on the pace that you want to, and it's working to keep you productive, that's what it is. You might define and interpret how that looks. But that to me is the sort of goal of what it should be doing for you, right? And then what's going to work actually for your system could be any number of things.
No, I think that's a really good point. Like different people need different things to keep them accountable, but accountable doesn't always mean like, oh, you're falling behind, now you're in trouble. Like accountability can just be like, oh, do I still remember that this is something I'm trying to work on this month or whatever.
Keeping it top of mind and staying productive and putting in the time you want towards your goal. And if you're not putting in the time you want, that's where we tweak the accountability system. But if you are putting in the time, then it's just a question of, are we being strategic with your efforts? But that's the biggest question, right? Yeah. Remember how we said earlier, like either your accountability system's working because you're being productive, great. If you're not finding that you're putting in the time, we need to tweak the system.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We have 3 minutes left. If people leave today and they only remember one thing, what is that one thing? What do you want it to be?
Yeah. I mean, considering we're talking about goal setting here, there's so much we talked about, but I think getting support, not feeling like you're on your own, number one. Number two, setting the right goals, staying open as things are fluid and evolve, and just making it small and manageable and breaking it down. And that could be small in the sense of you only need one goal, right? You don't need 100, and make it, what's the one most important goal to you right now? Start small with just one. Later on, you could add a second or third goal, but what's the number one goal? And how are you going to, even within that, make it small and manageable to take baby steps forward? What does that mean, right? So it's setting goals, and then how are you going to help yourself make it manageable, make it easy, make it doable to take small steps forward. And that's on whatever pace feels good to you. So I think we're giving you a lot of food for thought and questions and considerations to apply to yourself. And that's really what I hope to do, is helping you know that you have to make it work for you. If it's not working for you, we're never going to make that progress. So know that it's okay to be unique in what you need and how it's going to look for you. And just, be experimental until you start seeing that productivity. As soon as you see that productivity, then you get to be super strategic with like, all right, what is the best way to even work towards this goal? But first we got to make sure
how I optimize it.
Exactly. Right. So mindset, accountability, and then practical strategy.
Love it. All right. Okay. In the 2 minutes we have left, I just want to make sure that we take a second here to say huge thank you to our audience members. Thank y'all for coming today. I also want to, hopefully before y'all bounce, take a minute to congratulate yourselves, please. Y'all took time out of your day. You took an hour to spend on yourself, on doing something positive for you and your career. That is not an easy thing, y'all. So you should be congratulated for that. Truly, congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back. That is excellent. The other thing I want to highlight for all of you is thank you so much for joining us on Power to Fly today. Obviously, I have a job because y'all come to these events, so clearly I enjoy it. But I'm so grateful that these events prove valuable for all of you and that you keep coming back to these. So thank you so much for that. Rachel, massive thanks to you as well. It is no surprise, but it is always a massive joy to get to chat with you and learn more from you. I always pick up new stuff, y'all, and I've sat through the chats like this a lot. So really, really valuable. But thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. We are very, very grateful.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. And stay in touch. I put my website there. I always put out free resources. Always happy to help if you have any career goals that you're working on. And so, and I'll be back on Power to Fly as well. So I'll see you back here again.
Yay, hooray. All right, y'all, that's going to bring us to a close today. But we hope that if this was your first Power to Fly event, we will see you again soon. If you are one of our Power to Fly frequent flyers, it is so great to have seen you, and I cannot wait to see you again on a future event. Have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your day, week, weekend, and happy Valentine's Day, y'all.